So a question I get pretty often is, well, what about air as an element? And I've actually been corrected before, or try to be corrected, where somebody's like, great video, Jen, but you forgot the element of air. And in this video, this is why I want to do this video actually, because I want to explain the Chinese 5 elements and how air is not actually one of those 5 elements. Now, if you're talking elements, a lot of people are who go on YouTube, things like that, are going from the Western astrology. Okay, there's 4 elements usually, which are, you have fire, earth, water, and air. And a lot of people will say, well, where is air in this whole thing? What is metal, right? So that's why I want to do this video once again, because I think it's important to understand the differences amongst, throughout history. And I will admit, I don't know a ton about the other cultures as far as, Ayurvedic medicine, Hinduism, Buddhism, even Western astrology, where each element is tied to a zodiac symbol. While there's Chinese astrology, what I'm talking primarily about are the 5 elements, also known as the 5 phases. And this dates back, I think the first written kind of knowledge of the 5 elements was between the 10th and 5th century BC, so a long time ago. But there are elements in especially ancient Greece culture, right? Indian culture, Buddhism, like I said. So this is taken from, ancient Taoism primarily, and basically what the 5 elements or the 5 phases are an extension of the Yin Yang theory. And this is basically the essence of Chinese culture, ancient Chinese culture, yin and yang, basically explaining how the dynamic of everything in the universe, how things are either yin or yang, but dependent on their relationship to something else. So nothing is static, and that's what the Chinese believed, was that everything is changeable and everything relies on everything else. It's always a relationship. So the 5 phases are an extension of the yin yang. So they're not just static elements, okay? You don't just have fire, earth, metal, water, wood. They all rely on one another. They all nourish one another. They all, control one another. They work together, okay? And they work together within you and your body. And each element in the Chinese culture is associated with there's a lot of correspondences. So they correspond to different organ systems, emotions, season, color, flavor, things like that. So there's a lot of correspondences, and this is basically the basis for something like traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture and herbal medicine and stuff like that. So when somebody asks, what about air? Well, while air is not one of the elements in the Chinese philosophy, you could look at some of the qualities of air in the element of metal per se. And metal is not included in a lot of the other elements of some of the other cultures throughout history. Now, metal is, when I talk about correspondences, it corresponds to the lungs. And it's, which is the yin organ, and then its yang organ pair is the large intestine. So you could see air as being within the framework of the metal element, because lungs are what? About taking in air, okay? It's about inspiration, but also letting go. And that's where the large intestine, the yang pair organ, comes in, letting go of, toxins and old things. So you could look at, metals also, like I said, inspiration, but also from a spiritual standpoint. So it could be similar to the qualities of air. Also, you can look at qi, okay? Qi is portion of air, because qi runs through everything. Every living thing out there has this life force, this thing that brings it to life. So you could look at that as a quality of air. Also, from the Chinese medicine perspective, wood. Okay, each element also has a force of nature associated with it. In the case of wood, wind. Okay, wind is associated with wood. So you could look at that as air. So it's just a different culture, okay? And it dates back thousands and thousands of years of looking at everything and how it all ties together. But on the, the basics of the elements across all of history and cultures, it is a way of explaining or helping us understand ourselves and the phenomena of the universe and how we fit into that in the universe and relationships and things like that. So let me just quickly go over why it's not only called the 5 elements, but in Chinese history also called the 5 phases. So like I said, the elements are not just a static thing. And this is where this whole system is really useful for helping us understand ourselves. So we've all heard of yin and yang, right? And you can see within my little diagram or picture here, whatever you want to call it, that you have the yin yang symbol. All right, yang is the light, but there's also yin within yang, which is the darkness here, the little blip there. And then this is yin, okay? And there's yang within yin. So everything works together. So speaking from when I say phases, this is also a representation of the birth-death cycle. This is a representation of life. So don't just, when you watch these videos about the elements and what element type am I and stuff like that, it's all good and fun. It helps you understand yourself, but look at it from the broader perspective, the 5 elements in the yin yang. And, some people will think it's woo-woo medicine, or it's really out there, and astrology and things like that. But hear me out, okay? Birth-death cycle. This all makes sense, okay? Water element is the most yin. So you have yin and you have yang, right? Yin is more introspective and yang is more upward moving, outward moving, more vitality to it, okay? Think of the sun and then think of the moon, which is yin. But they both need one another. We can't have day without night, can't have night without day. Otherwise life would cease to exist, right? So anyway, water is associated with, if you're talking about the phases, pre-birth and death. But let's just start with pre-birth. So think of a woman who's pregnant. This is like the baby in the womb, right? It's dark. It's still like very yin state, right? It's this kind of dark, cold, not cold in the womb necessarily, but there's no light, right? There's no light coming out. Wood though, okay? And this goes this way, okay? From water, we go to wood, and wood is the growth. So it's almost like you give birth and suddenly you sprout out. It's like a plant. So you could relate human beings to things out in anything out in nature that grows, right? First, you need the seeds, and you have to nourish the seeds. The mother has to nourish the baby before the baby's born and can be born, but then the baby eventually comes out. Plants grow. And then you have, in the next phase, fire. Fire is the most yang. So think of fire as the height of summer. Fire is associated with the season of summer. Sunlight, vitality, people are out and about. This has the most energy to it. So this is like the prime of your life, okay? And then eventually we start moving back into yin. So we get to earth, which is a little more yin, where we're kind of enjoying the fruits of our labor. Like we're not at our height of our vitality in life, but we're starting to kind of slow down. We're enjoying things. We're enjoying, everything we've worked for. And then we start this gentle decline, okay? And that's where like metal comes in, a little more yin, in kind of this metal phase. A lot of people will find inspiration, or they start to be more spiritual, or they go within more and really focus on themselves instead of, kind of this always doing and excitement and all kinds of stuff. This is starting coming back to ourself. And then eventually we go back into water, which is going to be death. So don't look at it as death from a morbid thing, but in the Chinese culture, it's almost like pre-birth and death are the same. We're just going around the loop, the cycle of life, and coming back into ourselves, coming back to source. All right? And when you look at it that way, it's a beautiful thing. So a lot of people who are so afraid of death and getting older, you know, the Chinese culture really put a lot of emphasis and really respected their elders, because, you know, as you went through life, you gained wisdom. So they respected their elders. They didn't just throw them in a nursing home and be like, you know, they're not full of vitality anymore. So, you know, which sometimes we do in this country, but which is sad. But they respected the elders because they know that they have a lot of gained wisdom. They've gone through all these phases in life, and now they're coming back, and they're close to coming back to their source, which can be a beautiful thing. It's all in how you look at it in perspective. So I just wanted to give a brief overview on the Chinese 5 elements and phases, and why air is not included in these. It's just not part of the history, okay? So when you look at different elements, you know, they have that similar basis for explaining phenomena in the universe, but there's differences to each of them, okay? And that's why I focus primarily on the ancient Taoist culture and Chinese culture. So anyway, let me know your thoughts below. Subscribe if you haven't done so. I put out new videos often for you on anything Chinese 5 element, wisdom, words of wisdom, self-empowerment, I don't know, whatever I feel like doing, comedy skits if I feel like it. But anyway, have a great day, and I will see you on the next video. Peace.